Hey there everyone, it's Cameron coming to you live with another Q&A session on leadership and management. Some of the best parts of my week are interacting with you and seeing what you guys are dealing with out there in the real world in a live setting. So I want these to be resources. If you've got questions, if you've had some struggles this week, go ahead and throw them into the comments section. Let's talk about them and see if we can get you on a path to getting those things squared away. As some viewers jump in here, I know that a lot of you will be viewing this tape delayed, shall we say. I did this at noon Pacific time on Wednesday, but it's a great resource to listen and see how other real-world leaders are dealing with common problems that we all deal with. But if you want to know about these sessions in advance, go ahead, jump to my Facebook page, the events section. You can subscribe, and it just drops in a little thing into your news feed when I'm doing these so that you're aware of those, because I want these to be a resource for everybody. I also want to encourage everybody to drop down into the comments section and voice what their thoughts are on the questions that we're dealing with. Mohammed, I'm doing great. Thanks for jumping in today. I want to know what everybody else is thinking about particular questions that we're dealing with. I don't pretend to have all of the answers, and you might have some great insight and some great ideas that I want to share with the community. So throw those into the comment section as well. Make sure this is an interactive session, that you're not just listening. So I wanted to dive into a couple of questions I had from the last session that I didn't get a chance to discuss. While we wait for some more people to jump on and some questions to jump in for today, Iman, good to see you here. The first one is how do you deal with virtual workforces? How do you manage those effectively? And the biggest struggle with virtual workforces, and this is becoming more and more common, my wife works from home. For instance, this is more and more common in the workplace that you have these virtual arrangements, but luckily there's a huge amount of technology to help you out with that. So yes, you want to have your basics in place where you have metrics, you have reports that you can run that can show the productivity of particular individuals, and that you can address concerns that way. But the biggest thing from a leadership perspective is communication. When you have a virtual workforce, when you have people that aren't physically present with you, you need to be communicating with them even more than you communicate with those that are there in person. So you need to make a priority of setting up those weekly one-on-ones with them to discuss concerns that they have. Make sure they're updated on everything that's going on in the organization, that you can review their performance. You want to have general Skyped video conference team meetings every couple of weeks, every month, so that they can feel a part of the team and that they can engage with other individuals. Make sure that you have, and I trust that in these virtual arrangements that people have, Skype or Slack or some of those workforce tools where you can have those conversations and have those interactions with people on a regular basis. But the main thing is communication when you're talking about virtual environments. It's so important. Lynn, Amy, Stella, Sierra, Jamie, good to see you guys here. I'm glad you guys joined today. The other one that I wanted to talk about was a question that came up in regards to long-term employees that don't feel like they need to change and do things the new way. They don't want to change the way that they've done these. And this is a common change management problem. It isn't just experienced employees who were stuck in a rut, or those with 20 years of experience, that sort of thing. It's a common issue with change management, and the best thing to do is explain why. Why the change that you're instituting, the procedures that you're looking to put in place are better than the procedures that they've been doing for the last 10 years. There must be a reason that you're putting them into place. I don't trust that you have this vanity issue where you have to have things done your way, that you're looking to do things in a better way. So get clear and explain why you're doing that. And then ask them what concerns they have on it, why they aren't on board. And it opens up a dialogue that way. And you can address some of the concerns. A lot of the concerns they have may be well-founded or well-intentioned, but you're actually already addressing those and they're just not seeing it. So open up that dialogue, explain why you want to do something. This goes for any change management, not just old timers that don't want to change to the new procedures. But explain why you want to do things, and then ask what their concerns are and why they don't necessarily want to do that. And that's a great place to go with that. So I want to tackle Amy's question first. She was the first one to chime in today. It's tools to motivate employees to be the best they can be. The best tool that they have is going to be individual. There isn't any sort of panacea of things that can motivate people. uniformly. You want to be unique with it. So motivation really is, it's an internal thing. And so what you want to do is you want to have that conversation with the employees. Ask them what you can do to make them do the best work that they can do. Have that open conversation. Ask them where there's opportunities to improve. Ask them where there's problems. Start that dialogue. Give them a sense of ownership over the process, and then back up what they say with action. If they say that they like a particular duty or they're motivated by, sales incentives, that sort of thing, see what you can do to address that particular concern. But a lot of times the motivation, and I usually tell people, ask your employees for the top 3 things that motivate them. Because they may not know what their top one really is, but they'll probably nail it down with 3. So if you can address those 3, that gets you taken care of. But a lot of it is teamwork, a sense of ownership over what they're doing, a sense of control, and that they're doing important work. People want to do important things, and people want to be successful. So make sure you're talking about how what they do is important to the organization. I guarantee that your organization doesn't exist for no reason whatsoever. I'm sure it's vital to the organization. If you all took a week off and nobody did what you do on a daily basis, what would happen to the organization? There'd be no sales coming in. There might not be any bills being paid. Might not be any orders shipped. So your organization is vital. So talk about how important it is that what you're doing is to the organization, and then talk about your successes as well. So you want to, have that individual discussion. Have that unique discussion with each individual and let them know that you're listening to them and that you want to address what their concerns are. Then talk up success, and be sure that you're talking about how successful we are. We talked too much about the problems that we have and the things that we need to get fixed as leaders. We need to talk about what we're doing well, where they're doing well with things, and that'll help motivate the people a little bit better. Next question is, how relevant? Polly asked a great question. How relevant are annual performance reviews? In my experience, annual performance reviews are borderline irrelevant in most organizations. And there's a few reasons for that. And I'm not dogging on annual performance reviews. I think that annual performance reviews are essential. In fact, I'd really throw those out into being quarterly. I think it is more impactful to people. Annual is too big of a time difference there. But the reason is there's no accountability for what goes on. So the leader isn't accountable for the employee's improvement, and the employee isn't accountable for improving their goals. They need to be specific. So you need a performance review that's standardized, of course, across all individuals, so that you have this baseline expectation of what you expect. What is excellent performance? What's good performance? What's poor performance? Then you can grade the employee on where they are, and then it is really a development plan for the employee to see how they can improve in those areas. And it may be that they're excellent in certain areas, but there's always room for improvement. So you need to have that follow-up. Annual performance reviews are often 1 hour out of the entire year that the leader spends on it and that the employee spends on it. And that's where they go wrong. It needs to be a constant process. When you have that performance review and you set up that plan, then you need to work the plan. You spend hours later on, a week, a month later, reviewing, making sure you're following the plan, making sure there's improvement. But an annual performance review isn't a one-off thing. It's something that is constantly worked with, looked at, and measured against throughout the course of the next year, so you see where you end up. And that's really where annual performance reviews go wrong. I love them to death. I just don't think that we put enough effort into them as leaders to follow up on them. They're not, I want you to improve 10%, but then nothing happens when the employee doesn't improve 10%. And the employees see that. When you don't hold them accountable, they see that, and they will pay no attention to it. The next question, Joe asks, do you think money is a true motivator? I think people say so, but it can't be your true motivation. At some point, you will decrease with more money or not. Joe, study after study proves out that money is not the true motivator for most people. I I think there's a study I actually have in the first session from the trial of the Leadership Playbook, and I want to say it's something like 77% of people don't have money as a true motivator at all. They want camaraderie, they want a sense of purpose, they want to know that what they're doing has an impact. Lots of people have an intrinsic sense of motivation to do a good job. So no, I don't think that money is the primary mover for most people. It is a contributing factor. That's what I would like to say. It's, whether it is second on the list, third on the list, fourth on the list, fifth on the list, it's somewhere. We don't want to be expending effort without any sort of return from a financial perspective as well. That's one of the ways that it's gauged. So no, I don't think it's a true motivator for most individuals. However, it is a motivator for most individuals. Sierra asked the question, what ways are there to open up communication with an employee who shuts down when I coach her? I have asked her how she likes her feedback, and she says she has no problem with how I give feedback. That doesn't surprise me. However, her attitude changes after I've given her constructive feedback. I try to balance positive and constructive feedback with her. Sierra, what I try to do is, I love what you've done. You've run into a good problem to have, and that is that you're having these coaching sessions and you're having these feedback sessions, and they're just not working out necessarily for all individuals. And you'll run across this. There'll be some people that will step back from the feedback. What I would encourage in this case, and it sounds like you've done the positive and negative feedback, you've made sure that you're mentioning both things, is I do more informal feedback. So maybe it is more positive because it might be in more of a public setting, but I'd encourage you to give feedback out of the more formal coaching session. It might be that they respond better to informal feedback as opposed to the formal feedback. They feel like they've got a spotlight on them, they're nervous. There's lots of people that react differently to that one-on-one confrontation, and they're intimidated by it, even if you don't mean it to be that way. So I would encourage you to do a little bit more informal, positive feedback out there. Make sure that you're still mixing the positive and the negative when you're in the office and having that one-on-one coaching session. But that would be the way that I would do it. I'd look to bridge that gap a little bit and maybe lighten up the load that you have on those formal sessions to kind of make up for it. If those formal sessions, once you've had formal one-on-ones, I want to tell everybody this. Once you've had formal one-on-ones, most people say they don't have the time to do a half hour with every one of their 12 employees once a week. But once you've done that 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks down the road, those 30-minute sessions become 10 and 15-minute sessions. It goes much quicker. So in this case, I'd recommend maybe dialing that back even further, just doing a 5-minute, cover a few little points on there. But make sure that the feedback is doing it informal. But try that, and that might break through just a little bit. Ilias asked the question, hello Cameron, how could we create our organizational culture and motivate our teams to push them to work honestly? When you're looking to instill honesty in an organization, what you want transparency as much as possible. Transparency is the way to hold everybody accountable without holding them accountable. Let them hold themselves accountable. So what that means is you want to publish sales figures. Maybe you don't name names on sales figures, for instance, or orders shipped, or invoices processed, or whatever your metrics are. But post those in a public place. Maybe, like I said, you don't use names, you use employee numbers, or you use some sort of code or something like that. But let them know about what's going on. Also, make sure that you're being honest and you're conveying as much information as possible. It isn't just about the employee and the employee transparency. It's about the leader and how the leader is transparently telling the employees what's going on in the organization. We are in the information age. People are starved for information. They love to get information. So you need to tell them what's going on in the organization as a whole. What big initiatives are going on, what direction the company is going, what the vision changes are, and how we're doing with the vision. People love to hear that, but you need to be transparent as well. The other thing is that you do need some accountability measures. So if you want people to be honest with you, you are going to have that stick to the carrot, the positive motivation, and the stick is the negative motivation. And you need to know that if you aren't honest, that there are consequences to that behavior. So make sure you're clear on the expectations, what you want them to be honest about. You're crystal clear on that, they understand it, and that they, at least on a certain level, buy into it. And then you need to start holding people accountable. You would be surprised how once you hold a few people accountable and people see that you're serious about something, how there's just a groundswell shift in behavior and demeanor of your team members. So that would be the couple of things that I would encourage in that point. Polly, glad to see you here, and I'm glad it helps out. Manif asked the question here. Sometimes managers show good employees that they are not doing good because they want to eliminate their expectations of progress or better income. Good point. Because the organization does not have the chance to improve their position. They know that they deserve more, but they can't offer, but they don't want to lose you. That's an interesting point, and I think that some more engaged leaders may demonstrate that. I think that a better course of action, instead of as leaders, we can see that, we might have 5 superstars that should move forward in the organization, but we know that we're only going to have one supervisor spot that opens up over the course of the next year. And so that's a concern, and I think that's what Manif is getting at, is one way to do that is to let everybody know that they're not meeting expectations, so they don't have the expectation of getting that improvement. I think a better way to go, and just a more honest way of dealing with people and getting the most out of them, is seeing what you can do to develop them yourself. You might not be able to give them the promotion to supervisor, but you can give them other reports, other analysis. You can bring them to meetings, have them help you with PowerPoint presentations, that sort of thing. You can give them experience. I always say there's 2 reasons to leave a company. One is that you don't have any career prospects, which is what you're getting at, Manif. And the second reason is that you're not developing. You have to have both of those reasons before you leave a company. So if you're developing your team, if they're learning things, if they're being challenged on a certain level, then they're not as likely to leave. Also, make sure you're having those discussions with them about where they want to go in the company, what they want to be in, what they're interested in doing down the road. And then you can tailor that development for them. Some may eventually leave. But I think that it is disingenuous, and it's in the long term hurting them to either promise them things that they can't fulfill. Oh, you know what, maybe next year you'll have a promotion, when that's not going to happen. Or actually telling them they're not doing a good job when they are doing a good job. And I think that that's something that long term has a negative benefit to you, or a negative effect on you. And so I wouldn't go those 2 routes. Melinda asked the question, what do I do when the leader is anything but a leader? Melinda, this is not uncommon. Not to give them an excuse, but leadership isn't something that's trained. Most people are promoted into leadership because they were good at a line level job, not because they are good in bringing out the best in other people. And managing things in that respect. So there's a lot of really horrible leaders out there, and even more just middle of the road okay leaders that are out there. So what I always recommend in these cases is the leader in the organization is oftentimes not the person with the title. You can be a leader for your team members. I always say the way to spot a leader is to see who everybody goes to when they have a question or when there's a problem. That isn't always the person that they should be going to. It's oftentimes a supervisor or a lead or a fellow employee who always has the answers and always knows what they should be doing. So you can be that leader to your team members. It can also be an opportunity, because of that, for you to grow and develop your career. If you can take things on for that leader, offer to be a resource to them. See what you can do to help them out and to do a little bit extra in the organization. You can actually gain a huge amount of experience underneath a poor leader. Also, last thing I want to mention is, remember this poor leader. We have all had those horrible bosses, and a lot of us, me included, have taken on some of those traits and been burned for it and needed to address those things. So make sure you're not emulating that leadership that you see that you dislike so much. Write down what you don't like before you leave that organization or get the next promotion. Make sure that you note down those things that you disliked so that you don't do them in the future to your team. But take it as an opportunity, learn what you can from them, and make sure that you don't make the same mistakes. Tracy, good to see you here again. Lindo asked the question, I work for a company which is not doing well at the moment. We are not making enough money. Do I look for another job or hang on a bit longer? Lindo, I would say look for another job. It's too important. Your personal income, your ability to provide for yourself and your family and others is too important to take a risk if you see that the company is trending downward. This goes for organizations, departments as well, if you see them going in a bad direction, because that's something where you're going to run into no career prospects down the road. So it never hurts to look at other opportunities that are out there. I tell people, keep your resume, up to date and look at other opportunities that are out there. You want to seize those as much as possible. And if you have another opportunity, then you can go ahead and weigh which one you want to work at. You can weigh all the positives and negatives and make a decision. Just because you're offered a job at another place doesn't mean that you need to take that job at another place. So I'd go ahead and check out and see what is out there. I'd look to move quicker as opposed to later, because you don't want to be in that situation where you find yourself out of a job and then starting the job hunt, because that job hunt for a good job can take 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, depending on what you're looking for. So my advice would be to look elsewhere right now, and then see, depending on what you find, whether you want to leave or whether you want to stay. Hey there, Zulma, Jessica, Pistola. Jessica asked the question, how is the best way to manage expectations of your employees but also keep them motivated? The way to do that is to actually show them how to meet those expectations. And come up with a plan for meeting them. So it's great, people set crazy, lofty goals. The one that comes to mind all the time for me is Elon Musk and Tesla and SpaceX and the goals that they set for themselves. But I'm sure behind those goals that are crazy and that they usually fall short of, quite frankly, there is a step-by-step plan of how they're going to get there. That is how they motivate their people. It's not good enough to say, you know what, you are going to make $1 million next year. That's not going to motivate anybody. But if you say you're going to make $1 million next year and this is how we're going to get there in a step-by-step plan, well, now people get excited because now it becomes believable. So with those expectations that you set, also set up how you plan to get there. Is it additional training? Is it better resources? Is it better product? Is it better services? What are you going to do to get them to those expectations? Because ultimately, and I will say ultimately, it is the leader's job to get the absolute most out of their people. That may be different for different people, but it's your job to get the most out of them. And so you should be a partner in their performance. Set the expectation, but set the plan on what you are both going to do to get to that expectation. Sherry Bell asked the question, it's my first time as a team manager. I just started last Monday. I'm a shy type of person, but I like leading people to progress. However, I rattle and get so unfocused whenever my boss comes over. The fact that my boss has a very strong personality and seems like he doesn't appreciate efforts. How can I cope with that? Well, Sherry Bell, first of all, congratulations on the new position. I'll give you a little sideways advice here. 3 things that I look to focus on for brand new leaders is you want to listen as much as possible to your boss for expectations, your peers for common challenges, and your employees for what the opportunities and problems are that are out there. You want to prioritize as much as possible. Everybody has too much on their plate right now, so they can't get all of the work done, but let them know what the most important work is to get done so you make sure that gets done. And the third thing is to start working on delegation as much as possible. Simple way to do that is I do, we do, you do. So you master something, you work with it with somebody else, and then you hand it over for them to do. But work on those 3 things to start out with. The listening will actually help you gain a little bit of confidence. It's not uncommon for shy people. Introverts are often the best leaders because they're the ones that are thinking the most, and they're the ones that listen. Listening is such a key to getting feedback and information to make the right decisions down the road. So you have that backing up. What I would recommend in the case of a boss that is intimidating to you as much as possible is I would look them in the eye. I would focus on that because what you don't want is and I don't know how far they go in that aggressive assertiveness or that strong personality, but you don't want them to be intimidated by you. Partly because you're new to the leadership role, and a lot of times they will see that as weakness on your part. So make sure that you're looking them in the eye as much as possible and that you're just taking in what they are saying. You can give a response of, oh, you know what, I'll go ahead and work on that, or this is what I've done on things. But make sure that you are looking them in the eye and really listening to what it is that they're doing. And then what I want you to do is at the end of the day, for the next 5 days, I want you to write down one success that you had in your leadership development that particular day. It might be something small. It might be teaching somebody something. It might be handling a particular customer complaint well. But I want you to start building up those factors where you are doing a great job in leadership, and that will give you more confidence in what you're doing, because what I'm seeing kind of in the response here is it's making you question how good you are in leadership. And I want you to recognize your efforts. You don't have to wait for a leader to recognize your efforts. If you recognize your own efforts, if you recognize your own successes, that gives you that confidence and that gives you that motivation to take things on. You're not leaders aren't necessarily looking for approval or something out to save them out there. They're taking charge of it themselves. And so take charge of your own sense of appreciation and feel that success that way, but also make sure you're looking your boss in the eye, and that takes care of a whole lot of other problems. Renee asked the question, how do you get your leader to communicate? It is like pulling teeth to get him to just communicate new information that should be shared. I tend to get it from other colleagues because their boss actually shares the information. Well, Renee, you're already doing one of the suggestions that I have, and that is tap your colleagues, because between all of you, a lot of times many departments are in this boat, and you'd be surprised how everybody is missing a certain piece of the puzzle. So if you all get together and discuss what's going on in the organization or decisions that are made, then you'll all likely have more information. So that's certainly part of it. The other thing that I would do is just bring very specific, simple questions to them. So you might have 5 questions that you need addressed with them, but if you can just go ahead and take the most important one, pop into their office, ask that question, they'll know that you're not taking up a huge amount of their time, so they'll be more apt to give you a minute if they know that it's just a minute. And you can start breaking down some of those barriers. If you're asking important questions, that's great. If you're asking unimportant questions from the boss's perspective, then that's not something that's going to be helpful in getting through to them. The other thing is to focus on what's important to them. There's often a disconnect between, say, executive, manager, and employee as far as what's important to each one of these different levels. And so make sure you're clear on what's important to them. It might be not be what's important to you. They want to talk about and they have time to deal with issues that they are struggling with, and they'll be more apt to give you time and more apt to give you more information if you open up those communication channels that way. So be succinct in what you're asking. And then handle things from their perspective and see if you can deal with their priorities. It's what they are always talking about. It's what their boss bothers them about. Those sorts of things should be known to you. And see if you can frame those discussions. And the more you're able to do those 2 things, the more they're going to open up and communicate with you more, because you've established that dialogue, you've established that rapport at that point, and you're not just somebody who's bothering them with things they don't have time for. You're somebody who's bothering them with things that are valuable to them and that are important to the organization. And that's how I tackle those things. The next question that we have, Lynn Gina's question: if you notice other managers leaving the organization, what do you do? Well, it depends on the manager. I opened up a hotel here in Las Vegas. I was part of the leadership team there, and it was interesting to see the people that were there, very, very brilliant minds that I would work with, who left the company soon after the hotel opened. And that was really a harbinger for me of what it was going to turn into 6 months down the road. So I'd look at who is leaving. If it's mediocre and bad managers that are leaving, then great. That's actually a positive sign for you to stay with the company. But if it's the brightest people, it's the people you respect, the people that you emulate, if they're leaving the company, then you need to take a look and seriously look at those career prospects that you might have out there to better yourself, because it might be that the environment is shifting to one where you're not going to be growing as much as you want to. That really is what it came down to for me, is a couple of years in a situation where I wasn't growing and developing nearly as much as I thought I would be after the first 6 months with all of those brilliant minds there. Again, I would mention, you can look for jobs, you can get offered jobs, and you don't have to take them. But if you have them in hand, then you can weigh, what the benefits are that are out there. But it never hurts to look around. It never hurts to do interviews. It never hurts to, get job offers. At least then you have a clear idea of what your choices are. So that would be my recommendation. Take a look at who is leaving the company, and kind of gauge from there. But it never hurts to look.